Hello. So,
Yeah.
like this. Beard check. What are we doing today? Sorry. Quick message. Oh, you send this. These are the topics you're gonna cover. Okay. Hello everyone. We have some questions that are returning from time to time, I guess in our YouTube comment section. So we're gonna cover a few topics that are interesting for you, and we're gonna start by fertilization. The question is, can I use different fertilizings, for example CCAM with ADA? Well, mixing different types of fertilizers is not something we recommend. The problem is that all of them are developed to work in their own environment. So, for example, if you're using the ADA setup, which is based on no phosphates, and you add a different kind which has phosphates in it, all the other types of fertilizers, they get out of balance, which is never a good idea. There can be occasions where you actually want to add phosphate and you want to control the level of phosphate in your tank, but then you're gonna have to test it from time to time to make sure that the levels are correct. Yeah, I would say yes and no, if that makes sense to you. Why do you put the fine filter pad after the biological media? I would put the fine filter pad directly after the coarse filter pad. That's simple. Actually, we want to use the finest filtration before the water re-enters the aquarium. Fine filter pad catches all the very, very small bits that would stay in the water. So when it goes back to your aquarium, it's properly clean. Next question is, what the f***? I mean, that's not my reaction, that's the question. Do we have any kind of context for this?
No.
No. Okay, yeah, my answer is yes. Number 4, it's for CO2. Is your CO2 24/7? No, it's not, or in some cases it is. CO2 injection, it has two basic ways you can go. One of them, which is mainly used in planted aquariums, is by time. So we need CO2 in the water when the lights are on, so it actually helps the photosynthesis of the plants. That means we usually turn on the CO2 about 2 hours before the lights would turn on, and we turn them off together. The other way is to have the CO2 control your pH levels. This is mostly used in discus tanks and in some cases of planted tanks when you have plants that need a very stable pH level. That's the less common way, but in this case it basically works like your room thermostat with temperatures. So the pH goes above a certain level, the CO2 turns on and it drops your pH and then turns off, and it lets it rise again. CO2 again. When temp goes up in the summer, pressure in the tank goes up and I get more CO2 into tank. In winter, temperature drops and I get less CO2. Do we have to adjust CO2 as temps go up and down? Well, if you have a proper CO2 setup for aquarium use, then you shouldn't have this problem. Pressure changes by temperature in the CO2 cylinder itself, but the CO2 regulators we use, they actually adjust the outgoing pressure, and that's not dependent on the pressure in the bottle or the cylinder itself. So in proper CO2 reducers, you have two turning knobs. One of them is the fine valve, where you adjust the speed of CO2 going into the tank. That's what most people know. But there's usually a bigger one that actually changes the outgoing pressure, which is set to about 2 or 3 bars of pressure. But between 2 and 3 bars, depending if you're using a diffuser or an external reactor or whatever, they all are different. But that shouldn't change with temperatures. So no. If you have this problem, you probably have not a proper aquatic CO2 system, but some other type. Do you still add liquid fertilizer after adding the bottom peel fertilizer? Yes. The reason behind it is that most of the plants take up nutrients both through their roots and both through their leaves. So they need fertilizers in the soil and they need fertilizers in the water as well. There are some plants that only take up one or the other, but in most cases in an everyday tank you need to add both of them to make proper environment for your plants. This came regarding the IA PLC video. says very nice layouts, but it is getting a bit all of the same now. Why are there so few Dutch style scapes scoring high, for example? Although it's not really said in the rules, but IAPLC and most contests are very heavy on hardscapes. Most of the contest rules, around half of the points are given for the first impact when you see the tank. And to make a big impact, you need a creative hardscape. I would say this is the main reason behind this phenomenon. There are some aquascaping contests where there is a separate Dutch style category where you can enter, because Dutch style is beautiful, but it doesn't really have hardscape involved. How do you prevent the Monte Carlo from floating after some time? Well, you need to trim it. So what happens is, this goes to Monte Carlo, HC Cuba, Glossostigma. They all grow in a shape where they grow on themselves and the carpet gets thicker and thicker. And when it's too thick, the bottom part of it doesn't get any light. And keep in mind, these plants have very, very fragile and small rooting systems. So when they don't get enough light on the bottom, they basically start to rot and they just release their roots. And that's when you have the whole carpet floating up. We've had that ourselves as well. To avoid that, you need to make sure that you're trimming your carpet regularly. Keep it in a level where it's thick enough to be healthy, but it's not too thick, so the bottom part still gets some light. Okay, next question is, it's regarding the 650 layout that Victor and I did together. Would you say this layout or plant choice is lower maintenance and can last longer than competition scapes? Yes. They're definitely lower maintenance because the plants are mostly slow growing. It's basically just water change after water change. You don't really have to worry about plants taking over each other's space, which you would in a competition tank. In a competition style tank, you need all the plants in the very specific space you want them. In an NA layout like this one, you just let nature do its own thing and you don't really care about that. Definitely it's easier to keep up for a longer time. All that said, it's not impossible to keep a competition scape running for years. It just depends on your dedication. If you're willing to put in the work, you can have any kind of scape running for 4, 5, 6 years. And again, if someone builds a competition tank, they probably want to build a new one for next year's competition. So I would say that's the first reason why we don't see competition layouts running for years, because you need a new one for every year. Hey, that's a No Good Racing t-shirt from Japan. It's Tommy. Is that his name? Into cars. Yes, that is my name. Hi, I'm Tommy. And yes, I'm a car addict, I would say. That's my first... I think I'm in a car-related t-shirt at the moment, aren't I? So, yes, hello, other car fellows out there. I love aquascaping, but yeah, that's my real passion, cars. What is the best time for water change? I mean, before the light goes on or when they turn off or middle of the day? I don't think it matters. We've never tested this, and I don't know if you can find any information about this online, but I've done it all these 3 ways when I had aquariums at home, and I never noticed any difference, so I think you shouldn't care. Tamás, would you mind showing us your 2020 IAPLC Winning Works certificate? These people don't believe I have that, or what? Yes, I can show it to you. Please, Aaron, put it here beside me. That's my certificate. It was rank 68, I think. Something like that. But yeah, that's Winning Works category, and I couldn't make it this year. So let's hope next year it's going to be better. Can anyone tell me what are the backgrounds that you use on your aquariums, please? Yes. That's why we have these. Okay. This is the stuff. We usually don't use black, we mostly use white. This is regular vinyl. It's nothing special. It's decorational vinyl. You can get this in DIY shops, in any kind of Home Depot and shops like that. So nothing fancy. The reason they look so cool is they stick to the glass directly, and when you have powerful lights on top, the glass actually leads the light, and that makes it look like the background has light itself, but it doesn't, it's just vinyl. Can I add a Bristol nose pleco in a big planted tank? Will it eat my plants? No clue. Let me Google that for you. So it's Bristol nose pleco. Let's see. Now I actually know what this is now I've seen the picture. I had no idea this is the English name. Their main source of food is algae, which I would say it's possible they're gonna eat your plants as well. Obviously normal algae eaters, which we use, the small ones, they don't really turn into your plants because they have enough food in the tank already. But a big one like this, I would think so. I would say avoid these type of fish in your planted tanks. Have them in another tank. When placing Utricularia onto the wood, do we need to put some soil at the base of it, or it can just survive by sticking onto the wood? We don't really put any soil in there. So when we do this, we use them basically like moss. We try to avoid gluing because Utricularia is quite a fragile plant. So we just tuck them in to various spaces on the wood, and they survive perfectly when they survive. With Utricularia, it's always a 50-50. Even if you give it everything it needs, sometimes it just doesn't really want to work with you. Okay, so that's it for today. I hope you liked it, and I think we're gonna do a regular thing around this. So we're gonna have videos like this when we try to find the most interesting questions in the YouTube comments. As you've seen, we have some personal ones as well, and my favorite one was, what the f***? Still, I have no clue where it came from or why. But please, if you are the one who wrote it and you are watching this video, please clarify your issue and we're gonna resolve it. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for joining me. Goodbye.